In Washington, home prices have seen a modest increase of just 0.4% compared to last year, while sales have decreased by 4.5%. Additionally, the number of homes available on the market has surged by over 21%. Now, before anyone suggests that such a downturn couldn't happen here, let's recall what happened with Florida condos back in 2007. Back then, people were just as certain those prices would never drop, but they did catastrophically so. What we're seeing in the lead up to 2026 is likely to take many by surprise, and I'm here to make sure you're not one of them. I know how tiring and frustrating this situation can be. Many of you have spent years saving, only to watch prices soar while your income remains stagnant. Others have taken on financial strain, hoping that buying a home would ensure long-term stability. I felt that pressure and frustration myself, and that's why I'm sharing this. It's not to scare you, but to help you prepare. Take Seattle, for example. The number of homes listed there has surged by 30–40% compared to last year, yet median prices have remained almost unchanged. This discrepancy is significant, and if you want the housing market in Washington to finally make sense, hit the like button. We're about to break down the 10 cities that are quietly sitting on a time bomb, set to explode. Let's get started with number 10. Spokane. This is a city that believed it could become the next Seattle without the same economic drivers that Seattle has. Since 2020, home prices in Spokane have skyrocketed by about 67%, which is incredible when you really think about it. Last year, the median home price reached around $425,000, all while the typical household earns just $62,000 annually. Let's break that down at today's interest rates. Buying that median-priced home would require a monthly payment of about $3,200. Meanwhile, the average family's after-tax income is around $4,100 per month before covering the cost of groceries, utilities, and other basic living expenses. Something doesn't add up here. Spokane bet heavily on the idea that remote workers would flock from Seattle and settle there. However, reality is starting to set in. Return-to-office mandates are back. Amazon is calling employees back to the office. Microsoft is doing the same. And many California tech investors who purchased rental properties without even visiting them are likely to sell when the next property tax bill comes around. To make matters worse, Spokane has about 14,000 new housing units in the pipeline, while its population growth has slowed to just 0.3%. The mismatch between housing supply and demand is glaring, and this could lead to some serious fallout. If you agree that remote work has turned out to be one of the biggest real estate bubbles we've seen, drop a comment below. Spokane may be about to experience this lesson firsthand. And Spokane isn't the only one. Heading west, you'll find another city that has priced itself into a similar fantasy, Bellingham. And if you thought Spokane was stretched, Bellingham takes things to an even more extreme level. This city managed to convince itself that it was a budget-friendly alternative to Seattle, all while asking a staggering $670,000 for the median home price. In a balanced market, these homes would likely sell for half that amount. Much of this inflated price tag can be attributed to the Western Washington University effect. On paper, it sounds great until you realize that students can't even afford small studios near campus, where rents now range from $1,300 to $1,700 a month. And their parents? They're no longer rushing to buy investment properties at these inflated prices. Beyond the university, the two primary job sectors in the area are healthcare and retail. That's it. There's no significant tech presence, no major manufacturing base, just the landscape and scenic views doing most of the heavy lifting. And here's where things start to get uncomfortable. Insurance rates across Washington have been rising rapidly. In a city built on unstable soil, risks like landslides only add to the uncertainty, making buyers hesitant. Imagine spending nearly $680,000 on a home, paying around $8,000 a year in property taxes, and watching your insurance premiums climb year after year. All while the best-paying local job might be managing a Trader Joe's. At some point, the numbers just don't add up. Sure, you're close to the Canadian border, but let's be honest, how often does that really matter? Drop a comment and let me know what you think. Is being near Canada really worth an additional $200,000? And if you thought $650,000 fixer-uppers were outrageous, just wait until an entire city tries to reinvent itself as Seattle's younger, more affordable sibling. Now, let's talk about Tacoma. This city has spent years trying to rebrand itself as the cool, edgy younger sibling to Seattle, all while functioning as Seattle's overflow storage. To be fair, the waterfront redevelopment is stunning, and the Stadium District has undeniable charm. But once you look beyond those surface-level highlights, things start to look less rosy. The biggest issue with Tacoma is that its home prices are based on the assumption that everyone wants to commute into Seattle. However, that's no longer the case, and many people are choosing not to make the long commute. Tacoma's main economic driver, the Port of Tacoma, recently announced plans for major automation, which will cut about 30% of its workforce by 2026. That means roughly 4,500 households will no longer be in the market for homes. Meanwhile, developers have been full speed ahead, adding about 8,000 new housing units, acting as though the city's growth would continue indefinitely. Median home prices are approaching $515,000 for properties that, in a more balanced market, would probably be priced closer to $180,000. And honestly, the infamous Tacoma aroma isn't even the biggest issue anymore. What's really concerning is the smell of overextended finances and over-leveraged mortgages. I truly sympathize with the families who thought they were making a wise decision, avoiding Seattle's sky-high prices while still being close enough to its economic opportunities. But as Seattle's tech layoffs begin to hit the region, Tacoma will feel the impact twice as hard. Crime has already risen by about 23%, and that's before a full economic slowdown sets in. If you want to stay up to date on how this unfolds, make sure to hit subscribe, because things in Tacoma are about to get a lot more challenging. Imagine shelling out $500,000 for a home, only to feel the constant need for security cameras on every corner. It's not a comforting thought, especially when you're in a city like Tacoma, which isn't the only one living in the shadow of larger, more established neighbors. A bit further south, you'll find Vancouver, Washington, attempting to ride Portland's coattails straight toward a precarious future. Let's take a closer look at number 7, Vancouver, Washington. This city has built its entire identity around avoiding Oregon's income tax, while residents cross the river to take advantage of Oregon's tax-free shopping. On paper, it seems like a clever strategy. But in reality, you're paying the same steep home prices as Washington's other cities, with very little to show for it. What you're really buying is the pleasure of spending hours stuck in traffic on I-5 every day. Here's where things get really concerning. Intel's fab facility, just across the river, has begun downsizing, putting up to 8,000 jobs at risk. Meanwhile, Amazon's warehouse operations, Vancouver's second-largest employer, have been cutting shifts. Despite these shifts, the median home price in Vancouver is still hovering around $500,000. And let's clarify, this is Vancouver, Washington, not Vancouver, BC, where at least you get universal health care. In Vancouver, Washington, the biggest draw is its proximity to Portland. But being near Portland isn't exactly an amenity, it's just a geographical fact. To make matters worse, property taxes recently jumped by 18% to cover infrastructure projects that should have been addressed years ago. Buyers are essentially paying today's inflated prices to make up for the city's past planning mistakes. The new developments popping up, with names like Cascade Meadows and Harmony Heights, may sound appealing, but many of them are built on floodplains. With climate change bringing more intense weather events, like atmospheric rivers, the risk of flooding is only increasing. Insurance companies are taking notice, which is why premiums surged by around 40% last year. And if you think the high taxes and constant traffic are bad, just wait until we talk about the state capital. Number 6. Olympia, the state's political heart. This city has built much of its economy around government spending, and when state budget cuts come, those jobs are the first to be affected. Approximately 30% of Olympia's workforce is directly tied to government employment. Olympia has long tried to convince the market that it deserves Seattle-like prices, but its amenities don't quite match up. The city's nightlife winds down by 8 p.m., and the food scene revolves around a handful of brewpubs and an abundance of teriyaki spots. Yet, despite this, the median home price has risen to about $520,000. Things get uncomfortable when you look at the state's financial situation. With a projected $4 billion budget shortfall, Olympia is facing hiring freezes, layoffs, and a lot of government workers realizing that their $520,000 mortgage might be tied to a job security that's quickly evaporating. Add to that, Evergreen State College, which enrolls just over 2,100 undergraduates, 83% of whom live off campus. While the college contributes to the rental market, it doesn't have the strength of a large university to help stabilize the housing market. If enrollment dips or even just wavers, Olympia's housing market will feel the impact almost immediately. With remote work policies tightening and looming budget cuts on the horizon, this city is about to experience the consequences of an economy that relies heavily on tax revenue from areas also facing financial struggles. Drop a comment if you think that government job security is becoming a myth in 2025, because Olympia is quickly becoming a prime example of that reality. But this issue isn't limited to small cities. Even Washington's tech elite are facing a wake-up call. Let's head up north to Redmond, home of Microsoft, where signs of trouble are already becoming evident. Number 5. Redmond. I know what you're thinking. Redmond has Microsoft, so it's safe, right? Well, Detroit had General Motors, and we all know how that ended. Microsoft has already let go of 10,000 employees, and they aren't done yet. The days of unchecked expansion are behind us. And no, I'm not referring to the video game Age of Empires. This chapter is closing in the real world. Currently, the average home price in Redmond sits at around $1.36 million, and prices are barely budging up by only 1 to 4% over the past year, depending on the metric. This is a clear sign of stagnation. More concerning, Redfin data shows that the median sale price has dropped by about 6.2% year over year, now sitting at around $1.15 million. Homes are now staying on the market for about 28 days. For a city with a median home price above $1 million, this is hardly indicative of a thriving market. So, what's really happening behind the scenes? Microsoft is shifting toward a greater reliance on contract workers rather than full-time employees. And contractors don't buy $1.5 million homes. They rent apartments while they work on short-term contracts. Redmond's housing market was built on the assumption of endless growth from Microsoft, but now it's seeing a constant rotation of temporary workers who have no interest in taking on an $8,000 a month mortgage for a home that's 40 minutes away from anything fun. The new light rail station was supposed to be the solution, but plot twist, it wasn't. It only made it easier for people to leave. Meanwhile, luxury condos are sprouting up everywhere, but about 40% of them are vacant because very few people are willing to pay $4,500 a month to live above a Panera Bread. If you believe tech companies have quietly destroyed their own company towns, go ahead and like this video. Redmond is about to learn the hard way what happens when a company stops investing in the town it once helped thrive. Now, let's talk about Kirkland, number 4 on the list. Kirkland used to have real charm, but these days it's asking $1.3 million for homes that flood every winter. No, that's not an exaggeration. Just take a look at Oneida Beach flooding for confirmation. Yet, buyers are still being sold on the idea that waterfront properties justify a 7-figure price tag even when that same waterfront is actively undermining the foundation of your home. Meanwhile, cracks are starting to show elsewhere as well. Google has been scaling back its Kirkland campus, and downtown boutique stores are shutting down because commercial rents have skyrocketed to $75 per square foot. Basically the cost of renting space in Manhattan, but with none of the demand. And then, of course, there are the property taxes, which average around $18,000 per year. $18,000 annually for services that mainly consist of good schools. And sure, the schools look great because only affluent families can afford to live there. But that's a cycle that works until it doesn't. Once tech layoffs hit a critical point, you'll see how rapidly top-tier schools can turn into the next victim of budget cuts. The city has already approved plans for approximately 5,000 new housing units, all predicated on the assumption that growth would continue indefinitely. Well, that assumption is about to face a hard reality check. Expect emergency infrastructure evaluations to become a priority soon, and that breathtaking lake view you paid an extra $300,000 for? Get ready to watch it disappear behind construction cranes for at least the next decade. Even the beloved waterfront trail is just one strong atmospheric river away from becoming an underwater path rather than a scenic route. Now, let's talk about Bainbridge Island, number 3 on the list. Bainbridge Island, where Seattle's wealthy residents pretend to lead a simple, idyllic island life while casually splashing out $2.8 million on what amounts to a modest cottage. Here's the glaring issue. Total reliance on the ferry system should immediately disqualify this market from commanding 7-figure prices. Yet somehow, the chaos of ferry schedules has been rebranded as charm. Miss the ferry? Congratulations, you're looking at a 2-hour commute. That's not charm. That's a logistical disaster. And here's the kicker. Washington state ferries are literally falling apart. Operating at only 60% capacity, ferries are breaking down weekly, and service cuts are already on the table. So, in simple terms, the value of your home is entirely reliant on a transportation system that's being held together by hope and duct tape. But hey, if you've got $3 million to spend, enjoy being stranded. If you're watching this from Bainbridge Island, I sincerely hope you own a boat, because the ferry situation is about to worsen before it gets better. Let's move on to the demographics. The median age on the island is about 47, and it's rising steadily. When young families can't afford to move in, and the population starts to age out, things start to look grim fast. A shrinking tax base, overburdened public services, and the once charming community transforming into a place people only visit, it's a real estate nightmare waiting to unfold. And those new waterfront estates priced at $5 million? Good luck finding buyers when the only reliable way off the island runs a couple of times a day. On a good week. Hit subscribe if you want to watch this slow-motion unraveling. Bainbridge is about to learn the hard way. Islands are perfect for vacations, but not ideal for long-term investment. And the real estate woes don't end offshore. Just across the water lies Bellevue, the so-called crown jewel of the east side. But once you look closely, the cracks in the shiny glass towers are undeniable. Number 2. Bellevue. Bellevue is what happens when you demolish anything remotely interesting and replace it with glass towers meant to house Amazon's overflow. The median home price here has soared to around $1.6 million, a steep price for the privilege of living in a city that feels like it was designed by a spreadsheet. Downtown Bellevue feels like what happens when artificial intelligence is tasked with planning a city. It looks good on paper, but it's devoid of character. The restaurants are mostly national chains. The parks feel like corporate campus extensions. And as for culture, well, it's non-existent. It's almost laughable that Amazon's return to office initiative is being pushed when a significant portion of their Bellevue workforce has already relocated to Austin. In the heart of Bellevue, the luxury high-rises downtown are facing a staggering 35% vacancy rate. The rental market is about to experience a harsh reality check, as it learns what happens when housing is priced out of reach for everyone except tech workers, only for those tech workers to leave. Even Bellevue Square Mall, the city's central retail hub, is losing anchor stores at an alarming rate, a direct result of the shift to online shopping. But here's the real shocker. The East Side Light Rail project, which cost billions, has coincided with a significant uptick in crime along the corridor. Property crimes around the stations have surged by about 45%. That $1.6 million home you bought, drawn in by Bellevue's reputation for safety, is now right next to some very troubling transit-related crime statistics. The City Council's solution to all of this? More luxury developments. Because, of course, the answer to an affordability crisis is to build even more expensive housing that no one can afford. Drop a comment and tell me what you think. Will take Bellevue down first? Will it be the mass exodus of tech workers or the complete dissolution of what was once a strong sense of community? Because both issues are moving at full speed toward the finish line. And now, we arrive at the epicenter of the madness: Seattle. Specifically, certain neighborhoods that saw housing prices inflate faster and higher than anywhere else, and where the bubbles burst will be the loudest. Number 1. Seattle. Let's be clear, this isn't all of Seattle, but there are certain neighborhoods that completely lost the plot. Take Capitol Hill, where you're looking at a one-bedroom condo priced around $750,000 and the bonus of street camping right outside your door. Or Ballard, where you'll pay $1.2 million to live above a brewery that closes by 9 p.m. Then there's Fremont, still clinging to its quirky label while charging Manhattan gent-level prices for a vibe that feels more like Burlington Coat Factory on a bad day. Here's the part people are overlooking. Seattle proper has roughly 30,000 vacant housing units. 30,000. Yet, prices continue to rise, all because it's Seattle. This isn't about market fundamentals, it's about denial. Downtown office spaces are still operating at about 50% capacity, with major employers locking in permanent remote work. The convention center, once the engine behind years of hotel and condo developments, is only operating at about 30% of its pre-pandemic capacity. What's truly painful to witness are the families who bought homes between 2021 and 2022, believing they were securing their future. In a way, they did, but not the future they had envisioned. Many of these buyers are now locked into a lifetime of being house poor in a city that's slowly eating itself alive. Property crime is on the rise. Property taxes are climbing, and property values are about to experience a sharp correction, especially when Amazon finally admits that it doesn't need 60,000 employees in Seattle. When Microsoft acknowledges that working from Redmond is just as good as working from downtown, and when Boeing is already gone. The tax base is shrinking, while the city's problems continue to multiply. Meanwhile, the city council's response is to squeeze the remaining residents even more. These Seattle neighborhoods aren't just overpriced, they're priced for a version of reality that no longer exists, a time when living near downtown was a must, when tech money seemed endless, and when living in Seattle meant more than just overpaying for everything. 10 Washington cities about to face a harsh dose of reality, much like a freshman who just realized their philosophy degree won't pay the bills. If you're a property owner in any of these areas, it might be time to consider selling, ideally to a Californian who hasn't yet caught on to the shift. If you're planning to buy, though, my advice is simple: hold off. Seriously, take a step back and wait. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Which city do you think will take the biggest hit first? And which one will surprise everyone by maintaining its value? If you think I'm completely off the mark about your city, feel free to let me know. I actually enjoy being corrected by someone who just poured their savings into a 2-bedroom in Tacoma. If this video helped you avoid a huge mistake, go ahead and hit like. Make sure you subscribe because we're watching this market shift unfold in real time. And just to clarify, I'm not saying don't buy in Washington. I'm saying don't buy in these specific areas of the state at these inflated prices, especially in the current economic climate. If you want more in-depth insights into where the real estate market is truly headed, click on another video popping up on your screen right now.